Now comes chapter 11, the last chapter of what I present here. And, in the behavioral approach, we look at all kind of violations of the classical model. Some violations are very fundamental. The most basic condition, like a transitivity, is still violated. And preference reversal, more than anything, made people aware of this and also made people ready to be open to new behavioral models. In this chapter, we'll look at a few of these phenomena of this kind, and then what we can learn from them. And there's a lot of that going on, especially in marketing. These phenomena are important and often studied, but just a few we will discuss. So the first example comes now, evaluability hypothesis. And I should say that in general, the more irrational a phenomenon is, the harder it is to model and the more volatile. The model, we don't know really what's happening very precisely. Also with these phenomena, there are all kind of ideas about it and models, but then often not quantitative, just qualitative phenomena. It will be more or less like that. And that's the best we can do at present. And of course, the more we can know about it, the better it is, but we do our best, and it's still good to know these things. So now come some examples. For the first example, assume you want to buy a music dictionary. That is the example that Christopher Shea used, but modern generation don't even know what it is maybe. A music dictionary is a book, for those who know what that is, a book with many entries about music, information about musicians, songs they wrote, all kind of details. You want to buy that and you want to pay between 10 and 50 euro to get it. And you're in a used bookstore where you want to buy. And imagine there's a torn dictionary available. The cover is a little bit harmed, but other than that, it's okay. It has 20,000 entries. And in experiments, you are asked then, how much money would you be willing to pay to get it? Then another book. This book has okay appearance, looks quite like new, has fewer entries, 10,000. Also for that book, some subjects are asked, how much would you be willing to pay to get it? Also, subjects are sometimes asked choice. They are presented both of these books, and they are asked, which would you rather have if you could choose? Those are three kinds of questions asked to subjects. And now it was found that in the evaluations, so if you just see one book, you have to express in a price how much is it worth to you, then the first book is the best. The book that is not harmed, the good cover, looks good, has the highest monetary evaluation. However, if it is direct binary choice, if people can choose between the two, then they rather have the torn book because it has more entries. And this is, of course, quite paradoxical because the thing that you prefer most should have the highest monetary value. So we have here again a special kind of preference reversal. And well, it's the business of behavioral economics, not just to find this thing, but to find explanation for it. And then we consult psychology a lot to find out. In this case, Christopher Shea said, I think what is going on here is what I call the evaluability hypothesis. That is, in situations, attributes, aspects that are easy to evaluate, you look much at, but things that are a bit more difficult to evaluate, but maybe much more important, you have a tendency of ignoring them and maybe ignoring them too much. He says that is happening here. If people are in a situation of monetary evaluation, they don't have much clue, 10,000 entries, 20,000 entries, don't have much feeling how much that is worth. But the cover is very easy and clear and salient to them. So their judgment goes mostly by the cover. That's why the torn book gets a lower monetary evaluation than the other one. If it is, however, direct choice, if you can compare the two books, then you can immediately see one has 10,000 and the other 20,000, well, 20,000 is twice as much. So that's quite more valuable. You think that's much more useful than the torn. What do I care about the torn look like? The cover, sorry, what the cover looks like. So in direct choice, it is much easier to pay attention to this attribute, this aspect of the number of entries. That's why that decides in choice. And together, these things lead to irrationalities. It doesn't make sense to have these things together. So you see again how people are deviating from what is best from them because of all these behavioral phenomena. Other examples of this evaluability hypothesis because it's in many situations it's happening. Especially in marketing, people study these things a lot. For instance, in grocery stores, many things we buy, especially with food, it's quite easy to compare prices of things to each other. But comparing quality is much more difficult to see. So when people buy, they go almost exclusively by price. And the unfortunate consequence of it is if you are producing cakes, you can make a new cake that is much worse in taste than the cakes that existed before, but it's just a little bit cheaper. Then already people are going to buy your cake and not of your competitor. So that has led to food becoming lower quality, cheaper as time proceeds. And for instance, if you compare, well, your generation doesn't know, but my generation does, like 50 years ago, if meat and fruit, apples were way better than they are nowadays. It's incomparable. Well, you guys don't know about it. But this is one of our whole society, our food is suffering from this behavioral problem. That's why it's really desirable that people study behavioral phenomena, find ways to resolve all these problems, improve on that regard. Another, for instance, a special case of this model is cakes. If you, there's a general thing, and again, we consult psychologists. There are many psychologists work all their life on how the taste of food, how that works. Well-known phenomenon is if you compare two things, and one is a little bit sweeter than the other, then you like it more because you like sweetness. What you don't realize is that sweetness is suppressing many other good tastes that do decrease the quality of your experience, but you're not very aware of it. So in comparing taste, people are over-evaluating the sweetness. And that, for instance, with cakes, especially in Holland, cakes have become way too sweet because of this phenomenon repeated over year after year. Germany is doing much better in that regard. So I'm always happy in Germany if I can buy cakes. But here you see our whole country is suffering from these horrible consequences of these behavioral phenomena. And I really hope that at least one of students who took my course will go working in the food industry to protect us against all these behavioral phenomena as far as food is concerned. Anyway, so far for the evaluability hypothesis and the food industry. Next section will be context effects, and that will be the next recording.